12, I heard the number 20 feet, I heard the number 1,000 feet.
150,
Those numbers I could get, but the words were hard.
Come back at 1:30 and watch them.
Can I just have one closing comment?
One fast one.
I hope that this leads into a comprehensive CIP.
What we need is a motion to give the CAO authority to.
I would take that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Motion is second. Any discussion?
Could I just make a clarifying comment?
I will let you, yes.
What we wanted to ask for was to net, because the financing could be a bigger number,
Yeah.
somewhere between 3.9 and 4.1 for projects.
That was the motion.
Yeah, it would be received presentation, authorized CAO to obtain dollars for review and consider for the plans conveyed and arranged to net approximately 3.9 million to 4.1. That's the motion. Did you get a second?
Yes.
I need that. Okay, just check it. Okay, Madam Clerk, you pull the board.
Supervisor Chapman.
Aye.
Supervisor Alba.
Aye.
Supervisor Henfield.
We've been getting them.
Supervisor Hammond.
Aye.
Supervisor Powell.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you,
I really do want you to stay for the marijuana. Okay, do you guys want to try to finish a couple more before we go to lunch?
Let's go look, because Bob's got to work on
Bob's got to work. I got some stuff.
All right, we got two other items that we can.
Both of them are going to take a little while.
Yeah, what are they?
That's the,
So we'll probably take them up at 1:30 and finish.
Can we do like board reports and
we haven't done that yet.
yes.
I apologize. I did skip over board an agenda item for board meeting. Let's do that again. Jim.
I just would start by saying, first of all, we had a very successful junior fishing derby last Saturday. We had 521 youngsters, 2 to 5 that signed up. We're up to about 45 or 50 over the previous year. The 521 is actually kind of more our norm. We usually every year, and this is the 26th year. Figured we've had over 16,000 kids participate over the years. Not a whole lot of drama, the usual fusses between, some of the adults that, are a little bit overzealous in terms of helping the kids figure it out and stuff, but that happens from year to year. But anyway, so it's, was very supportive, and the county's participation and support in providing the insurance and stuff is really critical to that, so hopefully that will continue in the future. I attended yesterday the Area Agency on Aging meeting, PSA2, and we were in Mount Shasta. And speaking of all this finance stuff, I really would like to work with Richard and whatever staff he deems necessary. 2 issues that were before us, and by the way, we did let them know that Tom, that you weren't reappointed to be the alternate.
Oh, good.
You haven't been able to attend. Jeff has been the designated alternate from Lassen County, and we were hoping he was going to be able to attend yesterday, but he at the last moment couldn't, but he does plan on hopefully being at the next 2 meetings. The meeting in June that will be held on June 22nd, though, is going to be particularly important. We're going to probably have the person doing the actuarial report on the CalPERS Employers Retiree Benefit Trust Fund, which is funding the OPEB. And this is a JPA. There's 5 counties involved. It's been basically in place since 1980. And historically we've had 2-3 employees that work in the office. Last fall, one of the programs, the HICAP program, basically the provider for it fell on hard times and ceased to exist, so that was absorbed back into the area agency office. So now we have technically 10 employees. There's costs associated with that, and when you get into all this OPEB stuff and trying to define they were trying to get the board yesterday to approve entering into the program, very similar to what we did about 3 years ago with fully funding our post-benefit retirement expense. The issue that really comes down here is the monies, primarily the monies that are allocated for these programs. This is the funding mechanism for the 5 counties for all the senior programs. So Lassen Senior Services, what they do here in southern Lassen County, the group up at Big Valley, the 50 Plus Club that handles the contract up there, get their money for those programs from this funding source. And it's been a diminishing return. They basically, their allocation is pretty much the same allocation they had back in 1980. course, the cost of doing business is a lot different today than it was in 1980. So they're trying to meet more needs with less dollars. So there's no money in the pot to be able to pay for anything. So the question really comes down to is how do we pay for things like this OPEB obligation? And what's going to happen is it's going to fall back on the 5 counties, in terms of the participation in this JPA. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. We've got numerous JPAs that we participate in as counties. And I think we need to really, I brought the issue up a couple of years ago in a different light. This is actually, I think, even more concerning to me. So this issue is going to be hammered out on June 22nd. They're going to be bringing that in. And so I don't want to go to this meeting by myself. I don't want to go with Jeff. Kay White is the chair. She represents our county. The 3 of us are the delegates. We really need to have some financial assistance. I know Les Baugh is planning on taking it back and working with health and social service staff. And Shasta County has to how it relates because they represent 50% of this pot. We only represent 14.562 or whatever the percentage, so whatever dollar amount that falls out of this. But just dealing with this influx of these additional employees and having that, they're looking at $18,000. They're talking about $80,000, and it's coming out of pots that don't exist. So I think it's kind of something that's pretty serious. So I wanted to make that aware. Speaking of the JPA, I will be, in other JPAs, I will be attending the NORTEC meeting in Chico. And I was going to ask if it's possible, I don't know if you have an interest in that there, but I was thinking possibly even Mr. Shaw, given his portfolio, this might be a good one to have come down and just kind of see what's going on. That's an 11-county JPA, deals with all the job training funding. So the funding for the Lassen Career Network, Tracy Holt's operation for Alliance for Workforce Development. She actually operates in 5 of the 11 counties that she oversees, but that's where the monies come in there. There again, you have a staff that has its own little operation and stuff like that there, and they rely on these grant monies that they collect on our behalf. We're a signatory, so the executive board members are the 11 supervisors from the 11 counties, and I've been real concerned about that one in terms of what sort of funding obligations we create by participating in those environments. And it's easy to go down there and cut deals and all that kind of stuff, and they're living in their own world. And when we're cutting staff and not being able to deal with funding cutbacks, they think they're kind of immune from that. And they're not, because they are a direct extension of the powers of entities like this board. So I don't know if that's something that would be feasible, but I'd like to throw that out to the board. And I'll be attending that, and I'll give you a report next week as well. So kind of a double whammy this week. And it's interesting, 4 of us who serve on the PSA 2 board, and it's 10 members on that board, 2 from each county. 4 of us are also members of the NORTEC board, and so we almost have a quorum of NORTEC when we meet at PSA 2.
Okay,
That's it.
Yeah, I just want to make mention that Thursday at 1:30 at the Sheriff's Annex Building up in Alturas. On the Wardock side, we're going to have a groundwater meeting for the Big Valley groundwater ordinance. The state's mandated with Big Valley's intermediate priority zone. So anyway, I will be attending that, so hopefully you can get representative from the county.
I plan on
To try to go to that, that'd be good. And I went to RCRC last week, and it was a good deal. Melody, Modoc County has information you'll have to get it from, but you probably know about there's a meeting in June on what to do with the extra money.
CMSD?
Yes.
Yeah.
'Cause
Okay.
Extra money?
Yeah, they used to have 850, what was it, 85,000 people enrolled, and now they're down to 600 or something.
Yeah.
600 people involved?
Yeah.
Wow. It was a Affordable Care Act. So anyway, so that's interesting.
Well, if anybody says that there's extra money, believe me, there'll be a lot of people attending the meeting.
Anyway, and then, of course, this is the time of year down there now where all the new laws are being written and going to be amended and going back and forth and everywhere. So anyway, there was several of them that we need to be aware of, maybe write some letters for, and I've got a list of them, so I can get together with you, Tony, on it. One was AB 45, it's on solid waste, which you guys on solid waste might be aware of. It's pretty bad.
We've had some discussions already.
So anyway, maybe some letters of opposition might be good for that. Then a good letter of support would be for AB 1203, which is going to replace the SRA fee. They're, instead of just being tied to the rural homeowners, they're going to tie it to the OES so that everybody's paying for it instead of just the rural. So that's a good, interesting concept for me to put letter of support on. Anyway,
And reduce it.
what's that?
Reduce it.
Well, I don't know, they're going to change it. I don't know how it's going to work out, but they're working on it. SRS, it looks like it got tied under the trailer bill, so we'll probably get our funding for that from the Secure Rural Schools Act. But this is probably to me the last 2 years of it, so.
Actually, it was signed, it was approved by both houses of Congress, and I think either CSAC or RC sent out, it was signed by last Thursday.
I think it was
Signed-
signed-
no, I saw the email, it's been signed by Obama.
Yeah, I think that's, I think that.
Yeah.
All right, but anyways, we got like 2 years, and after that, we're gonna have to
Yeah,
go
we
to
get,
the forest receipts.
yeah, we get
So-
1.6 million in the first year, and the second year was like 1.5 million. It's
5% reduction.
Yeah, and 1.5 something, and then we go to, then 200,000 something is our 20% of the forest receipts.
Right.
So that's what it
So
falls off to.
so we really need to keep pushing on the Forest Service to get
Anything else here?
activity going. That was pretty much about it, we'll call it there. Oh, we need to get a letter to the Plumas, because Plumas is fighting with Forest Service on the road closures, and Sierra County's giving them a letter of support, so maybe we'll have to think about doing the same.
Okay, on the railroad closure,
Yes.
I mean, they've been pretty at speed on that.
And the Plumas National Forest.
This is on the
Plumas National
Plumas.
Forest.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
The last one is dealt a lot differently.
Okay, they didn't hold on it. Yeah.
Speaking of that, at the coordination council meeting last night, Leanne Trimble Taylor was there, and she mentioned the Gap Feller Annex, how they are recognizing that Janesville Town Council wants possession of that, so,
Once you look at it,
yeah. Which is a big deal for us, I think.
okay, Tom.
We're still pursuing the partnership with UNR, and we have a big meeting about that next week to staff the clinics, and it's looking pretty promising.
How many more 747s have landed out there?
So,
3.
Okay.
3 total. 0 more, but 3 total.
I attended the staff meeting yesterday on the Sustainable Groundwater Act, and moving along on that. Did you want to give the CAO report now? Or Richard, do you have anything important?
Could I do that after lunch?
We did after lunch. Okay, so we're over there until 1:30. We go back to D3, with the proclamation. Sharon, Serrano.
There were three.
There were 3 of them.
Yes.
Elizabeth Hughes, and you tell me about the last one, Anna.
Lisa for mental health.
We have a motion to approve the 3 proclamation.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, ayes have it.
Thank you.
Okay, picture that, I missed that. You guys want to take up 2 and 3 before you do have to go back to marijuana?
Sure, please.
Okay, we're going to take up H2 and 3, then we'll go back into marijuana. So we get these out of the way so we can.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, Mr. Anderson's not here to present the item today, so I'm going
You gonna do it?
to do it as best I can.
Okay, we all depend on you.
Bob, that's a good idea. You just do marijuana last week and end the meeting on a high note.
Good one, Jim.
Just trying to help me out for you, Bob.
Thank you.
The board asked for an update on one of the business assistance loans that our Economic Development Division made approximately a year ago to the Medicine Logging Company. And so that's what I will endeavor to do here. In your packet, you've got a memo from Director Anderson that briefly summarizes the chronology of events with regard to that loan. The Medices, as most know, is a logging company in the Westwood area who came to the county and made application for a business assistance loan in the amount of $350,000. That loan was approved by our loan committee a little over a year ago in February of 2014. The board subsequently approved it in March, and the loan was funded in April according to the terms of the approval. The payments began in July of 2014. 3 payments were made. Medici then defaulted on their loan terms on October 1st of 2014 and did not make the required payments. The county, in the meantime, had verified that the employees that were required to be retained were retained. That was done in September of 2014. So in January, the county received notice that both the Medici Logging Corporation, Medici Logging Inc., and its primary shareholders, Lisa Medici and Joseph and Jane Medici, both filed bankruptcy in December and January, respectively. So within council and my authority, we contracted with a special counsel, bankruptcy counsel, to assist in the collection of this loan through the bankruptcy process. That's what we've been doing for the last couple of months. And the collateral is, since the business is no longer operating, the collateral is what we can look to for repayment. When the loan was made, the county took essentially three different varieties of collateral, two involving the corporation, one involving the corporation, and another involving Jack, two others involving Jack. The first being a second position in the Medici Logging Corporation equipment, second to the Reading Bank of Commerce, who also had a loan to the Medicis. That collateral, we don't expect much, if anything, from its liquidation because of the first position of the Reading Bank of Commerce is $870,000 or so, and we don't expect that equipment to generate that amount of money. Reading Bank of Commerce has asked the bankruptcy court for a relief of stay of some of that equipment and have made a private party sale of $400,000 and some odd thousand of that equipment. They still have some equipment yet to sell of the Medici Inc. equipment. We don't think that it will be enough to retire Reading Bank of Commerce's entire loan and therefore have anything left over for us. Having said that, we have two other items of collateral. We have equipment that was owned by Jack Medici as an individual, three major pieces of equipment, which we have taken possession of. We have relocated to county facilities and requested and received a relief of the automatic stay order from the bankruptcy court to sell that equipment. Council Burns and I will be meeting later this week with an auction company to hopefully enter into an agreement to dispose of that equipment, and we expect to get some recovery out of that without, not enough probably to retire the loan, but maybe somewhere around $100,000. We also have a first deed of trust on Jack and Jane Medici's, the Medici Corporation logging yard in Westwood, which is a 22-acre parcel with some improvements and so forth on it. They valued it for the bankruptcy purposes, I think, between $200,000 and $250,000. And that, of course, is currently tied up in the bankruptcy proceedings. In order for us to foreclose on that, we'd have to do like we did with the equipment and obtain a relief of the automatic stay, foreclose on the property, and then if it wasn't purchased at the foreclosure sale, we would own it and we would sell it. Alternatively to that, without getting into a great deal of strategy, that property has delinquent taxes on it, and so it would be eligible for a tax sale in, if my math's correct, 2 or 3 years. And if we wait for that time, then the tax sale would go forward, taxes would be paid, and then anything left over from the purchaser would go towards the loan. We would be the first to be paid from proceeds in excess of what the taxes are. So I guess the good news, if there is any out of this, two pieces of, I think, good news. One, our staff did a really good job in documenting the requirements of the loan from a standpoint of job retention. And so that was done in September. We immediately notified the state that had been done. We received a letter. I don't think it's in your packet, but I've got it.
I'd like a copy of it.
Okay.
I like to see
a
the
letter.
I like to see the letters.
Okay, that, in essence, with some disclaimer says, you fulfilled your obligations with regard to this business assistance loan. And we can make copies of that letter. So what that means from a fiscal standpoint is that the money that we loaned to the Medicis was a grant from the state. Now, if we accept that grant and loan the money to Medicis and don't meet our obligations to the state, then we're obligated to repay to the state that grant. Since we've complied with the terms of that grant, we're not required to remit any money to the state. So it's not a general fund hit to the county.
So the state though is out for $350,000 or whatever it was. So as you recover these other assets, like the $100,000 from the equipment, the $19,000 that was paid back in those loan payments, and if eventually you get first in line and get recovered, theoretically there could be up to $350,000 that would be recovered. Does that go back to the state, or who gets that?
No, that money will
So
come
you're
back.
only getting to keep the state's what?
That'll come back to the county, and it will be called, help me with the terminology, Jen, program income, which can be used for other CDBG eligible activities to be loaned out or granted, as the case may be. But they're defined.
So we not
eligible
only do you not be on the hook for losing the $350,000, you actually gaining upwards to $350,000 in program income.
That's possible.
Something doesn't seem right about that.
Well,
I think that money should go back to the state to reimburse the state for what is now become their loss.
Well, I'm not
So
going to suggest.
you make money on their misfortune.
I am not going
Subject to an audit, a state audit.
I'm not going to try to explain the motives of the state, but what I do understand is that according to them, we have met the objectives of the grant, as crazy as that may seem.
Our staff did our job.
They did, but I just kind of see it just to me is odd how when something goes south, how you can get rewarded for it. Well, I mean, best you can hope is to break even.
There is not a high expectation of the state, because of the nature of these loans, there's not a high expectation that these things are all going to repay, because by and large they don't.
Well, if that's the
Say
case,
everything went great, we weren't having this discussion, and we're making our payments back. Would we have to pay that money back to the state? It just stays within the
No,
county.
that's it.
So that makes, it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense.
I mean, I follow what he's saying. I'm just saying is it doesn't seem kind of right to me. But
Well, I don't see right in a normal way of doing business on the property.
maybe that's why the state of California is the way it is. I mean, it's like, where do you stand in line to get free money? I mean, instead of sending them my income tax payments like I had to do last week, maybe they should be sending me some income tax payments.
Try it.
See how that works out for you.
Yeah.
Just take it out of that fund.
Are there, I can go into any level of detail.
Yeah, question, raise your hand up.
I just have one question. Richard, I see that they started this in the summer of 2010 and it took till the summer of 2014 to complete the loan.
I can't speak to that until about March 10th of 2014.
I'll speak to that, Tom.
No.
I understand they did at least come to the county in 2010. I don't know if there was an application filed.
There was an application, but they did not have a business plan, and so they actually went through the process where we had to procure an underwriter at the time. We were not staffed to be able to handle such a business, in-depth business loan, so we had to go out to RFP, and that took several months. And then we procured Superior California, who did the underwriting on this loan, and then we went back and forth with the state on a couple different aspects. As the loan was going through the process, funding increased, it decreased, and so we were looking at different funding streams to go through, so it would change to an over-the-counter funding, which has a different application process, and then it went back to that it was a business assistance application. They also got a business plan created during this time, and so there were several different aspects that actually held up this loan, and so that's why I think unfortunately it's so long.
Anybody else? Question, board? Anybody from the public have Like, yeah.
Yeah. I'm Jim Hodge from Susanville. Thanks for your summary because you just answered about half of my questions. Unlike you, I'm shaking my head here at this state process that to me, this is a loan program that is, unless you're in bad straits, you can't qualify for a loan. But if you're in bad straits and maybe don't have cash flow, how could you possibly pay for it?
You know, I'm not going to argue with you.
Yeah, I just don't know. But that leads to my next point, which has to do with the process itself. And one of the things that I'm curious about, going back to at the time that this loan was made, I know that you rely on a loan committee to look at this and approve this for you. But do you also have the information about it, or did you just have a blank, this is the kind of loan that we're doing here? Did you have anything about their cash flow or how it was that they were going to repay this loan?
I didn't.
I never saw anything.
Yeah.
There was a state loan committee at first had to approve it, then the local loan committee had to approve it, then it came to us for final approval. And I don't
Right, but
remember
you
exactly
didn't have
what-
any financial information
No.
that says whether or not this is
The
a
action
good
that-
idea.
The action brought to us was basically ratifying the review work that was done by this hierarchy of review that goes on. So our job is to certify that the process, this bizarre process they have, was completed and go forth and do it. So
Right.
it was, I mean, I don't think the decision was from a financial point of view as a financial analysis, other than being assured by the reports that were presented to us that this application met all the requirements that were expected
Yeah.
of it.
It just makes me scratch my head in the process, and again, that's maybe the state thing, but if you're looking at this loan application and somebody's first borrowed $1 million from another bank and now borrowing $350,000
I don't
here.
recall that even being part of any of the discussion that the board was given.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I don't recall that ever being a part of the discussion the board was
That you
given.
didn't know about the $1 million to Reading?
No.
870.
No, I don't recall that ever being presented, so. But you read and saw there when it first became available, that's the first time we saw it too, that part of it.
Okay. So, I don't know how we work around this. I mean, I'm just trying to look at this and saying, hoping that we don't go through this process again. What did we learn from this?
Probably what we learned.
That's next on the agenda. Item H3.
Yeah.
We probably won't do it anymore. That's probably the end of it, right?
Well, but let me jump in there on that.
I'm not sure.
Back in the early '90s, we had a pig farm, and we had a similar kind of thing that was like, and the board's going like, "What the hell are you guys doing?" And we made it real clear then that that's not a role for the county to play. And so then that's fine. Staff changes 2 or 3 times, and pretty soon another set of staff brings in, and next thing you know, we're back into being in this kind of business, and the board is at the same point where it was back in like 1994 and 95, saying, wait a minute, this is not a proper role for the county to be involved in these kind of loan activities. It's not a role for us. And so that's what the next item on the agenda is. So that's what we learned from this.
I guess Jim, the other side of it is laying through it. There's a lot of people that have got a good, successful help from business assistant loans, whether it be from this county grant program like this, or through the Small Business Administration, through FHA, whatever it be, and a lot of people come to us, why aren't you helping people get started in business? You have the ability to get these grants and loans from the state, through this, whatever it be, and you can help a lot of people and create more jobs and create, the whole ball of wax. And so if we ignore it, don't do it, we get our butts chewed for not helping the community form new businesses, form new jobs. So, I don't know. My guess is right now, and I support this loan, and I was wrong in doing that at this point, I can see, but it's not comparable to the pig farm. This is a 3-generation logging company that is very successful in the Westwood area. It's not like some new enterprise, somebody was going to try to convince us they're going to make money, as long as the money, I'll show you how to do it. That was the pig farm. So, I mean, it's a whole different thing, and with the information that was made to us was, okay, let's help these people out and get them going. Westwood needs help, you know, and I will be the first to say, I did support doing this.
Yeah, I get it that we needed jobs. In this case, there were, 37 jobs kind of at question here, and I appreciate that we want to help these people out. I'm a beneficiary of one of those small business loans
So am I.
years ago.
I'm 1974, that's
But also, I had to give them, my whole sock size and every piece of paperwork, and how was it that what was my financial plan to pay it back, right?
But that's what the state loan committee and this other loan committee was supposed to make those verifications. And what was reported to us was they passed whatever the mustard was, whatever the standard was, having this underwriter evaluate, the whatever business plan or whatever proposal they had. All that was what was presented to us as having been done. And as Bob said, we were, to me, the whole thing's crazy.
Richard, what was this guy, this consultant Orville's role in this whole thing?
Well, Superior, California is an entity that the county had contracted with, and he calls himself as an underwriter, which I think is really a misnomer. An underwriter is someone who takes risk. This is more of this service that he provided is credit analysis, and in my view then and my view now, they didn't do very good credit analysis, and we've terminated that relationship with
I guess, Jim, have you finished? You have another question?
No, I was
just
just saying-
your question answered.
Yeah, no, my questions got answered. My other questions at this point are sort of moot.
What kind of?
But I guess I'm just, it sounds like you guys are not sure that you do this again, or you certainly take a harder look at it in the event that you did. And I guess that's mostly what I wanted to say. And point number two, despite all the problems, I just want to say thank you to all of you, because I know in many ways this is a thankless job. And there's a lot of day-to-day stuff that goes on that you have to deal with and, make our county work, and I do appreciate that.
If I could, just comment on that, I appreciate that too, Jim, but, in terms of doing it again or something like that, taking a hard look, I think, we rely on the process, and the process has a lot of different moving parts and people who have expertise. There's no way a board member individually can have all those expertise and have been able to do it. So you rely upon the recommendations and the judgment of the professional staff giving you the input. And, on the surface, you have to decide, is this really a proper role for government to, supersede the private sector? I feel that, we keep talking about the role of government, what is it, get out of the way of the private sector, let the private sector do its thing. And, the fact that this business operation was not able to amass the capital it needed through the conventional private sector means, should have been the first red flag. The fact that we're having to use this program, and it's kind of like a program of last resort from what I've gathered in recent weeks and months as we've been reviewing, what went wrong with this particular application. And the question is, is it a role for the proper role for the government, whether it's local government, state government, federal government, to bridge the failure of the private sector to maybe address what would otherwise be, a legitimate activity in promoting, jobs and stuff. So yeah, if the role of the government is to subsidize business in the private sector, I guess that's what this program attempted to do, but in this case failed. Maybe there's a lot of cases where it succeeds. But if the private sector is going to rely on the government to do that for it, I think the private sector needs to stop bad-mouthing and bashing the government. And to be honest with you, it's more my libertarian streak in me, is I don't think necessarily this is really the role for government. I think had I given it closer examination, it wouldn't have been on the merits of whether or not this was a credit-worthy company or not, but whether this is a proper role for government or not. And to be honest with you, I don't think it is. And I think we should minimize our involvement in that area. And whatever sort of these grant opportunities that do exist should be used to improve the infrastructure of our community, which makes the community a more inviting place for the private sector to come and conduct private sector business. That, to me, has been the traditional role that I think the county had defined in the past. But periodically, we get sidetracked and diverted. Staff comes in, they mean well. Oh yeah, we got this program the state's going to do or the feds can do, and we can do all these kind of things. And I think, if anything, we need to be vigilant as a board to say, yeah, that may be fine and nice, but let somebody else worry about that, because that's not our role. Let's take whatever those funds are available and apply them to infrastructure improvements, having better fiber optics, having better roads, having better airports, having better train service and stuff like that, making, creating the platform for a business park so that business would have a reason to be here and do the things that they do. Those are the kind of things those money should be spent on, not trying to create jobs or to keep somebody from going off the deep end with the jobs that they have available.
What about a grant for solar for the swimming pool complex?
That's the swimming pool is part of the infrastructure. It makes the community a more inviting place to be. I think that would be a better use to spend those kind of money. Absolutely. I think if it's a trade-off, do we do this particular application and doing something like that? Absolutely. I think that's where we should be putting our emphasis, as a board. So that's a policy issue. It has nothing to do with these individuals, and I think that is what really should be the focus of our debate and concern right now. I'm glad to know that the state isn't going to hold us hostage for the failure to meet the expectations of the application.
Okay.
Thank you, Jim, for your input.
Thank you, Jim. Mrs. Spencer, did you have a question? I'm sure you do. Also, I can tell by your facial expression.
I should have worn my waders. I talked to Mr. Nash from Superior, and the first thing I asked him is if he was aware that the board members, had received the credit analysis, and he said yes. And so the $1 million is in there.
Who said that? Who said that?
Mr. Nash from
Who's
Superior.
Mr. Nash? I don't know Mr. Nash.
He's the credit.
He's fired him.
Superior Council.
They fired him.
I've had no contact with Mr. Nash for it. So for him to tell you that he's done whatever for me,
No, he didn't mention your name.
Okay, good. 'Cause
But
I
he
had no
did
contact.
mention, and I have emails, dates, times, it's all there, which we're going to give to the state. The West auctioned off, was authorized by the bankruptcy court to auction off the interest in the inventory and equipment that Bank of Commerce had, and they netted around $221,000. And from that, you take 12% from, and anything I'm going to tell you in the next 3 minutes, I can give you documents. So I don't want any surprises over here if I disprove what was just said. I can prove every word of it. Can We Help has a handout, and first of all, we want to talk about the loan itself. In 2008, Medici Logging had outstanding loans with Plumas Bank. On February 15th, 2010, Joe Egan of Plumas Bank paid for an appraisal of the Medici equipment. That's how you got the $1.4 million appraisal for the equipment that was considered in the credit analysis that Mr. Nash did for you. At the time of Mr. Egan's appraisal, Medici Logging's inventory was a boneyard. It basically, I took pictures, went out there and took pictures of it, and there's nothing running, there's nothing, there's parts over 22 acres. It's basically, the auctioneer called it a boneyard. It's just junk. And they sold it for pennies on the dollar. The $1.452 million appraisal by Plumas Bank had been inflated to satisfy the loans at the Plumas Bank. So there was incentive for Mr. Egan to come in with a $1.4 million appraisal. He needed to get, and again, I assure you, I can document everything I'm saying. So the $1.4 million was done so Bank of Commerce would then look at, well, wow, we can loan him $1 million. So they got the loan based on Mr. Egan's appraisal. There was $800,000 left owing, according to the bankruptcy court, left on the loan. Obviously, the $200,000 or less that they got at the auction for the equipment, which was their collateral, Bank of Commerce collateral, isn't going to do anything. The loan committee, when we found out what the loan committee had a member of Plymouth Bank on it, Larry Smith from HSP was on it, and of course, the underwriters, I don't know what to call them, they're not really underwriters because they don't take any risk. They're not protecting you from anything. The appraisal on that you used, the $1.4 million that you used to approve through the different levels, really was a deciding factor, I'm sure, before it got to you, that $350,000 wasn't a risk. But the problem you have there is that I believe that some of you knew about the $1 million loan. And given the status of that loan and the creditworthiness on that $1 million loan, that $350,000 should have never come to you for approval. It should have just been dismissed. On March 22nd, 2015...
Dismissed by who?
You should have just said, we're not approving it, goodbye, dismiss. On March 22nd, 2015, Richard Egan claimed that, and these are quotes, the county has received a relief from the automatic stay order for certain pieces of equipment that we had the first lien on. This is news that he's confiscated these 3 pieces of equipment. If they do sell it, the Lassen County tax department, the treasurer, is first paid. She'll confirm that they get, if you get any money back from this, the $19,000 will be paid from whatever he can get for this now 3 pieces of equipment. So the taxes will be paid regardless. The next is adequate documentation to satisfy public benefit. I'd like to address that.
You have about 6 minutes to your 3 minutes.
Okay, well, I timed everybody that you gave 15 minutes or more to today, and I know you don't want to hear this, so you're going to